Okay, so today you're going to learn how to use this watercolor palette that we have, and there's some cool things about this that you may not know. When you open this up, this is your palette. You can mix colors in here, and I'll show you how to do that in just a little bit. When you're done at the end of the day, I want you to clean your palette. If you don't use the palette, then obviously you don't have to clean it. But they break apart like this, so that you can just rinse that out, dry it off, and then you can put it right back on, and then put your paintbrush back in here, and it's ready for the next class. Okay? So go ahead and open up your palettes. And some of y'all's might already be a little bit wet because we used them in my first class. But this is how, if they're really dry, you want to activate your paint. So what you're going to do is pull some clean water and just drop a few drops in here like this. Just kind of shake that paintbrush in there. And you're going to get that paint wet. And it's going to be a lot easier to use here in just a minute. Okay? And just kind of let it sit there. 3 or 4 drops, you'll see it. Nice and wet. Then you're going to do a dry brush technique with watercolor. You're going to use this one sheet of this paper that you have here. You still will have to use the water. So wet your brush and then go in here and just kind of pull up some of that paint. I don't want you digging in the paint. If it is too thick or sticky or scratchy, you don't have enough water in it. So watercolor wants to move. It wants to be able to, look, that's kind of a little bit scratchy, don't you think? So I want to add a little bit of water to that so that my watercolor can move around. If it is just acting like it doesn't want to move, the solvent is water. And I can dip back in there and move it back around. If I want it a little bit darker, then I'll dip back in and pick up some more paint. If it is sticky or tacky, it does not have enough water. And then I want to put another color on here. I don't want to just have blue. Should I just take this blue and just dip it right into that yellow?
No.
Think I might want to put it in here first and clean it off?
Maybe.
Think so. And then I will wipe that off, dip it into my clean water, so I always have clean water. And now I can pull up some of that paint and put it on my paper. If I have pulled up some of that color on my paintbrush, I want to rinse it off again, kind of wipe it off, and then go back into my clean water before I go back into that yellow, because I do not want to contaminate that whole pan of yellow. And so I continue to do that. I'm going to fill up my paper. I'm going to go into the orange. I'm probably going to end up with brown because I dropped a little bit of blue on my paper, and see how it turned brown? That's because they are complementary colors, and that's what they do. Continue to clean off that brush. Don't dip into another color until you clean that off. Move that around, go to the edges, fill up your whole paper, and that is how you paint with watercolor in a dry brush. Okay, so to use your palette to mix your colors, you want to get a little bit of water on your brush, make sure it's nice and clean. I'm going to go in and maybe make an orange, but I'm going to make it myself. I'm going to pull that color up and put it on this palette over here. Then I'm going to clean off my brush wipe it off, and go back into my clean water. This is why you have the 2 cups, so you don't have to keep going back to the sink and getting more water. And then, look at that beautiful orange that I have mixed. And then I can go to that. This a little scratchy, isn't it? I need more water. And that's how you mix colors on your palette. Then I want to make that orange a little bit darker, so I'm going to add black to it. You don't have white in these palettes. I have some watercolors for later on in the year that do have white in them. But you are barely going to touch into that black paint. I'm just going to put a little over here on the side and then mix it into my color. But look how fast that went. So you just need just a little tiny bit, but I can pull it into that color here and blend a little bit more, and I actually have 3 shades of orange right there. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, and then if I want it darker, I'll go back into this one. Beautiful. So you have a whole value range of orange like that. You can do that with all your colors the same exact way. Okay, so the first one that we did was a dry brush technique in watercolor. This one is what we call a wet wash. And it just starts with painting with clear water and just painting your whole entire piece of paper with water. I know it sounds silly, but we're just going to paint it with water. I want you to soak that paper from edge to edge. Let the paper do its job. It wants to soak up water. Really drop it on there because I think you will like what happens. When we paint with watercolor, you always want to put a wash in for a background so you're not having to paint in between all the little objects that you draw on there. You just put a wash over all your pencil drawing and all that, and then you can go back in with darker colors after the wash, after it's dried. Okay, so it's really wet. So now I'm going to, this is just kind of fun to start with, I'm going to pull up this blue and just kind of dip it in there, and then I'm going to drop it on my paint. Oh, look at that. I'm just going to put that in a couple places and let that happen. Just because it's fun. It looks like a little bit of tie-dye, doesn't it?
Can we tie-dye t-shirts in here?
We don't. We don't. Okay, so I would not, unless I want brown, I'm not going to pull up orange. But I am going to pull some purple in there and let that go with it. And let it spread in there. And we will do an assignment later on that deals more with watercolor techniques and things like that. Just let them kind of all go together. You can always drop more water on there like that and just let it run together. And that makes a really pretty background. If I want it to be just a purpley blue background, I can go like this and blend it together a little bit more. And I have a nice pretty wet wash background that I might use next week as a printing surface for my edition of prints. How pretty is that? So I'm just going to put that to the side. Okay. Then, when you're all done with class today, you're going to clean up your palette anywhere you need to kind of clean up a little bit. You're going to take this, if you use the palette, and you're going to pull this away, bends a little bit, pull it off of here, set that down, and then you're going to go over to the sink and wash this and dry it out with a paper towel. Clean off your paintbrush, put it back into your set, clean it, and then you will get it ready for the next class. And that's how you use watercolors.